From the creators who brought you RuPaul's Drag Race and Million Dollar Listing, this is World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Wow Report, where we count down the things that make us go wow. I'm Fender Bailey, co-founder of World of Wonder, joined by our Chief Creative Officer. Sounds like an S&M relationship, but it isn't. Tom Campbell.
Hello, hello, hello. It's good to see you.
It is a little bit, I'm afraid to tell you.
And our endless source of inspiration, editor of the Wow Report, James St. James.
How do you do? How do you do? How do you do?
And of course, Blake Jacobs.
Hi.
Hi, Blake.
This is, Blake tells me this is our 15th show in lockdown.
Jeez, Louise.
15th annual show. So we've been here 15 years. And
can you imagine when we the first one, I thought we might be home for a month. Man, were we wrong.
I know. I thought we'll be back traveling, doing things by July. And
yeah,
we are.
No,
We are.
I don't think I will ever see another person again. I will never see any of you live ever again.
That could be an improvement for all of us, I suppose, right? If we just go remote, you know. I mean, there is much less driving to and from meetings. The anxiety of parking has completely gone away. Anyway, let's count down the top 10 things that made us go wow this week. Number 10, Tom.
Number 10.
I finally saw it, the documentary that everyone is talking about. It's Mucho, 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 Amor. The Walter Mercado documentary currently streaming on Netflix. Have either of you seen the documentary?
I saw it at Sundance.
Oh, you
I
did?
saw it at Sundance and talked about it on this very show.
Still my thunder. We're doing it again. It's worth talking about again.
It
James,
is.
What have you seen it yet?
I have not, but I'm a huge fan of Walter's, and I've been following him for my whole life, and he's just an icon for the ages. So
Right,
I'm excited to see it.
And he reminds me a lot of you in the best ways. No, because Walter Mercado, just for those who don't know, I don't know who you are. Walter Mercado is this iconic figure who just recently passed away, but just had a loving documentary called Mucho, Mucho Amor, which was his sign-off. He was so many things, but he was famous in Latin America and Latin world and Latin language television as the good-hearted astrologer. He was, and from like the 60s and 70s and 80s, and he crossed over at certain points. He had his own kind of like psychic hotline, but really, and he is flamboyant, like beyond belief.
He is the psychic Liberace is what he
Yes,
is.
exactly.
The documentary talks about as a little boy, someone saw him bring a bird back to life and thought he was a healer. So, and he's this, one of these incredible characters who just decided to he felt he had a destiny and seized it, and he wanted to be famous. But and he was an actor, and he was openly gay is the wrong word, right? Because in the 50s and 60s and 70s, we weren't openly gay, but he was openly flamboyant. Sorry.
He was exactly. Just like Liberace, fluid, non-binary, I would go so far as to say.
And probably
really,
the first non-binary person or gender fluid person or gay person that many people saw growing up and was accepted into your living room just as a matter of course, and nobody ever questioned it.
Yes. And at the same time, they do hint upon Latin-speaking comedians would make fun of him in sketches. And it was always, at the expense of gay people jokes. But he hated that, but he rose above it. And really, the thing, I thought of James because he would ornately dress himself with jewels and just the most expensive things and Versace things. And he lives a little more humbly toward the end of his life, still okay, but humbly. But in his bedroom was this wild collection of capes and robes, and the Pope meets Liberace, and he would just throw them on. There's a fashion show at one point, and that made me think 100% of James St. James. I thought of Fenton Bailey because this documentary reminded me a lot, and not to compare them apples for apples, but it reminded me of the Eyes of Tammy Faye, which is the documentary you and Randy did, which people that should be on a list of documentaries that people need to see if they haven't seen.
Just one of those figures who brought joy, and in some respects was uncomplicated in that respect. They had a pure mission of bringing joy. Liberace, Tammy Faye, you know, and it's a terrible tragedy, right? I mean, he was terribly badly ripped off. That's the awful, there's a dark part of the story.
There is a villain in the story, and it's his manager, and it's told well because the manager kind of comes on. He's sort of telling, you know, everyone's sort of telling the myth and telling the origins, and Walter was incredibly grateful to this manager because he brought, you know, he made his dreams come true. He took him from sort of basic cable to the world, but you know, in these awful, you know, whenever there's that power dynamic and that lure of money, the manager had him sign like a contract that gave away his rights and his likeness and his name for perpetuity. Yeah. It was just crazy and something he overcame. You know, we always feel like we have a tiny little part of the Walter Mercado story because when we did Viva Hollywood, Search for America's Numero Uno telenovela star, the show that we produced a year before Drag Race, which really influenced so much of what we do in Drag Race. Walter Mercado, we met him and he was part of it. And he was, you know, the Ru males we have now where Ru comes on in the beginning all glammed up and kind of gives them mysterious advice about what they're about to do. Walter served that role in Viva Hollywood. He was and it ended with Mucho, Mucho Amor.
What was it like to meet him, Tom? You met him.
Yes, we all met him. He came to the office with his assistant. He also has the other thing, sort of gay history, if you will, is he has an assistant who I don't think was his lover, but it was that acceptable way to have a lover when you lived in a world where you couldn't have a partner. The assistant claims he never had laid a finger on him. They talk about it very openly. They weren't in the closet, so to speak, by the end. But you know that was sort of an acceptable way to have affection and someone who cared about you every step of the way.
Tom, are you admitting something about you and your assistant that we need to know? Does HR need to know about?
Well, you're going to be meeting someone who works for me a little bit later, but not at all. And it's just the last thing, and it's what Fenton said and underlined it. It's like, wow, what a message of love. Because they say that Lin-Manuel, what's his name, from
Hamilton,
goes and he explains, as does everyone else, that when they'd be watching, you know, trashy, you know, afternoon television, as we all do, and all of a sudden Walter's 15 minutes would go, shh, shh, and everyone would sit to wait for their sign. But and all of his horoscopes were about love. You know, it was a metaphor for him to reach through the television and cast a spell on you and tell you could be what you wanted to be. You can embrace love. It was such a positive message. And I think he was 87 when he passed. So what a life and what a legacy. And everyone's raving about it. When I first started watching, I thought, like, I know all this about Walter because I'm full of, you know, myself. But just spending time with Walter is a magical thing. So I recommend it for everyone.
James.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Yes, but before we go on to number 9, I was just going to say, I think you should do an astrology show. Get out all the costumes. You can, don't you think?
Please, yes. Let's make it happen. I'm there. Number 9, I watched this afternoon at Palm Springs on Hulu. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you heard about this? Have you seen it? Do you get it?
I haven't seen it.
Andy Samberg.
It's Andy Samberg. Can I tell you that it is Hulu's biggest movie to date? It is the most discussed movie on Twitter. It broke all Sundance records. It got $17.5 million for Hulu. It has got a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. People are raving about this movie and Adam Sandberg's performance. It's a time loop movie, like Groundhog Day. And you think it's all been done before. Like we know time loop movies. Like there's nothing exciting about that. Edge of Tomorrow was the one with Tom Cruise, and that sort of reinvented it. But this is absolutely a delight. It is so funny. It is so good. You cry, you laugh. It has Andy Samberg, Peter Gallagher, J.K. Rowling, what's his name? J.K.
Simmons.
J.K. Simmons, yes, not J.K. Rowling. It has J.K. Simmons, Kristen Milioti, and Tyler Hoechlin from Teen Wolf, and Kristen Milioti is the love interest in it, and she's absolutely fantastic. They're both caught in this time loop, reliving every single day, and they go through the same old time, the tropes of doing, killing yourself every day and da da da. But there's a big twist in this one, and they really love each other. It's one of the best movies I've seen all year. I think it's really fantastic.
Wow.
And I just think everybody needs to give this a chance. And like I said, I'm meh about Andy Samberg. I don't really care about him either way, but this is probably the best things he's ever done.
And I'm mad about time loop movies. Like, I feel like that it must be an exhausted genre, but obviously not. It's supposed to be the best.
It's like you think that the zombie genre is exhausted, and then someone comes along and reinvents it, or like this is something that just sort of it gave a shot of adrenaline to a sort of a tired genre, and it's absolutely fantastic, and people are raving about it, and I can't rave about it enough.
What is it called? Palm Springs, and I guess it's filmed in Palm Springs, right?
Yes, it all takes place in Palm Springs at your house.
On Hulu. Okay. Well, I tell you what I was doing in Palm Springs this week. At number 8.
Number 8.
Book of the Trump Club. I was reading Mary Trump's Too Much and Never Enough.
Does she come across as likable? Do you love her? Do you believe her?
I love her. I believe her. She is actually likable. There's only once or twice when it's a little bit victimy. But Jesus Christ, if you're in that family, you would feel
how can you not be a victim?
And I'm doing the Audible book, and she's reading it, and it's a great beginning. That she goes to the White House for some relative's birthday party at the White House. She hasn't seen Trump in 8 years, and she just says with sort of brilliant understatement that once Trump became a brand, she'd always loved her family name, Trump, but then once Trump became a brand name, her feelings got a little more complicated. and
yet so she still keeps the name. So I mean, it's a double-edged sword.
Yes, but why should she be bullied out of it? And that's surely the Trump story, and it certainly is in this book. No one has stood up to this monster since the moment he was born. And in fact, the one person who did, and this is a great scene in the book too, is his older brother, the oldest brother, Freddie. Now, Freddie was supposed to be the heir to the Fred family fortune. Fred was a builder of low-rent properties in Brooklyn, and basically a slumlord and a racist and things like that. And Freddie was supposed to be the golden son. But
much
Freddie
like the Kennedys, much like there was the older brother in the Kennedys, and he was, yes.
Right, but Freddie just didn't fancy it. Freddie's real passion was to be sorry, not a license. His real passion was to be a pilot, and he got his flying license, and he did it all on his own. And in many respects, he was the only one in that family who's really genuinely made something of themselves. Because
the alcoholic died, right?
That's right. Fred Trump Sr., who was the master builder, all the money he got to build the estates he built, he got from the government. He didn't really make anything himself. And yes, Freddie was berated by his father. It is a psychological drama of such harshness and cruelty. The only time I almost felt a shred of sympathy was that obviously Trump became who he was because of the parental abuse he was suffering. He saw the way Fred Sr. treated Freddie and demeaned him and put him down, and just everything he liked, he just tore to pieces, and literally psychologically, systematically over a period of years, just destroyed him. And Trump's solution to that was to be like, fuck you, no one's, I don't give a fuck. And in a way, he out crueled the cruelty of the father. And then the father came around, and he became the golden son. Donald Trump became the golden son because he didn't give a fuck, and he was the killer he always wanted his son to be, and that Freddie, who loved to fly, could never be. But there is a great scene, and this is when Freddie was 14 and Trump was 7, and Trump was always a bastard and an asshole, and he glued his brother's Lego bricks together and hid it. It was just awful. And at one point at one family dinner, Freddie picked up a bowl of mashed potatoes and dumped it on Trump's head. And you know what? I believe that is the point at which Donald Trump decided that Freddie must die. Because I also think another great turning point in our culture was when Obama made fun of Trump at the correspondence dinner. Because you see Trump there, he's deciding, he's going to be president. He's going to destroy everything Obama ever did. It's extraordinary to witness. And it's just a tragedy that Freddie, who was the only person who really ever stood up to Trump by dumping that bowl of mashed potato on his head, ended up basically, dying of alcoholism. And it was just terribly abused and ill-treated. And I tell you, it's a really good book and everyone should read it.
I'm looking forward to it. I might get it on tape. I hear it's fun to have it be read to you.
Yeah.
Like nightmarish fairy tales at night.
Mary Trump reads it. The author reads it. It's great. I know we got to move on, but one of the great things is when Trump married Ivana, the first Christmas present she got was 3 pairs of underwear.
Ha! Why? What does that mean? What's the symbolism? What's that?
What it means is they're really cheap in terms of giving gifts. The next year, there was a gold lame shoe with chocolates in it wrapped in cellophane.
Ha!
And the year after that, she was given a food hamper, also wrapped in cellophane, but that they'd gone through it and taken the caviar out. So the crackers were left, the cheese and crackers, but the caviar was gone. That's the gifts they give. And she says very wryly,
back in class, those Trumps, I tell you.
She says, the one thing I learned about Ivana, she loves cellophane. Let's take a break. How about that? I love it. Blake.
I have a question. What city is further west? Is it LA, San Diego, or Reno, Nevada?
So it's a geography lesson here on the Wow Report on Radio Andy. We'll be right back with the answer after the break.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report on Radio Andy. I am Fenton here with Tom and James St. James and Blake. And before Blake gives us the answer to the question, I just have to tell you that Backyard Envy is returning to Bravo for season 2, August 4th, 10 p.m.
Love it, love it, love it. They're so cute. All
There
three.
you go. They're coming on the show, actually, I think.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Right?
we're going to have them on the week of July 31st.
We're going to have them all, right, Blake?
Can we make it a shirtless episode? Everybody has to take their shirt off.
Let's not, please.
All right. Okay, so we've reached number 7.
Wait, the question.
First, I asked a
Oh,
question.
yeah, you're right.
Which city is further west? Is it Los Angeles, San Diego, or Reno, Nevada?
I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and we'll answer at the same time. 1, 2, 3, Reno.
No.
That's right. Even though it looks further west on the map.
I believe isn't Vegas also to the west of Los Angeles?
I believe so.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it. You wouldn't think to know it.
We sit down. We dip. We dip. I dip. You dip. We dip.
So, but we do drive east when we go to Vegas. You drive east, don't you?
Or do we?
I always fly, darling, private.
But you fly. All right, we're counting down the top 10 things that make us go, wow.
Wow.
Number 7.
Number 7.
This is probably more on the top of my mind because I watch way too much QVC, and they have been celebrating aggressively Christmas in July.
Oh, Hallmark has their Christmas in July. They do every single movie is a Christmas movie, and it's berserk.
It feels like something that used to be a saying has been embraced wholly in a way that I want to talk about whether it's okay or not. Now, I get that times are sad and Christmas makes people happy, as Disneyland makes people happy. But again, having watched the QVC portion of it, which, by the way, guilty of watching almost all of it, it's like fake trees, flameless fake candles, figurines. It just feels like a landfill in your living room. I don't understand.
Well, where does it end? I mean, is it Easter in September? Is it Halloween in May? I mean, we could do this with anything.
Double it up.
To make a little money. And that's what it feels like. It feels like a cash grab to me, and it feels hollow and false, and I don't think I like it. And yet, there is something nice about turning on the TV and seeing, one of those cheesy Hallmark movies in July. So I don't know. I'm of two minds.
I hear you, Fenton. Are you a big Christmas person to begin with?
I'm sort of a big Christmas person, but less so now, just because.
Because you have no children and you're being a Grinch?
Yeah, but no. I do the whole Santa thing. I eat the cookies, drink the milk, write the notes. Hope Nolan doesn't watch this show. And in years past, we made Theron dress up as Santa and break into the house, and we were outside the house, and we were like, "Oh look, there's Santa breaking into the house with gifts." So we've done it very elaborately in the past, and I do love a little bit of Christmas, But to get into this, did you buy anything, Tom? That's my question.
No, but I'm just amazed. I love the salesmanship of QVC. That's no secret. I love how they can spin anything up. How everything is worthwhile, the way they can just go on rapturously about like an ugly angel, with some bad piping, and how it brings the warmth and the home and the fan. I mean, it's the Walter Mercado, but all with the desire to sell you something.
I've been watching the Jewel Network recently. I've discovered it, where they just sell like uncut jewels and like cut and like it's the same thing as QVC, but they will have like a crappy topaz or something, and they will talk about it for an hour and a half. Look at the cut and the clear, and it's such a gift to be able to just talk endlessly. Yeah. We strive for it here, and yet it is truly a gift to have.
But it's I just think it's overrun thing. I love your idea that there's going to be Halloween in spring and Halloween. And just double it up. Although I have to say, one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Elena Han Kayam, since her mother started the tradition, and her mother's is a senior, amazing person. I won't spill her age, but they celebrate birthdays and half birthdays. Now
doesn't Nolan get two?
Yeah, Nolan has his coming home birthday and his birthday. So he has two as well.
But they just make donut breakfast, and they've they're a family that will do anything that hints at the need for a costume. They're there, and they're dressed up.
So James, I thought this would chime with your theory of sort of the algorithmic nature of things and the way we've lost a sense of time, that it can all be mashed up now, right?
Well, that is true. Yes, we all are in like multiple time streams at once, and who knows where we really stand in as far as the multiverse.
Like you said, you did that great thing. Like our Instagram feeds used to be chronological, and now they're just kind of hodgepodgey and
piggly, yes.
To stay on longer, or to vote for Trump or something. I don't know, the conspiracy. Anyway, down. Right. I mean, if it gives you joy, do it. But I say down with Christmas in July.
Down with Christmas in July. Okay. James, number 6.
Number 6.
The James St. James Book Club, the History Book Club, is in full effect again this week. I have been reading 2 biographies of Madame de Staël. She was a French woman of letters. She was actually, what was she? I think maybe she was Swiss. I can't remember, but she was a woman of letters during the late 18th century and early 19th century. She was a political theorist, and she had a salon, a political salon that all the greats of the day came to, Talleyrand and Rousseau and all of those people. And she was this is written by Francine Duplessis Gray, who is herself a woman of letters, and she calls her the first modern woman, and she really was. She was during the French Revolution, then during the Napoleon era, and then during the Restoration is when she really thrived. And she was a great enemy of Napoleon. He loathed her. He absolutely despised her because she had so much power, and she was a woman who dared to speak out against him, sort of like Mary Trump, I guess. And he had her exiled many, many times over the years. She was married to the Swiss ambassador, so she would go to Germany, she would go to England, she would go to Switzerland, and she was, like I say, the first modern woman in that she was sexually liberated. She was fiercely intellectual. She had a career at a time when women did not have a career, and she was treated as an equal by all of the leading intellectuals of the period. She was not an attractive woman, but she was a bit of a slut, and people loved her for her mind, and she used her mind to sort of lure the leading men of the era into her bed. But like I said, it's 2 books that I'm reading. The other one is called The Dangerous Exile by Angelica Go, and that I'm reading that on my iPad, so I don't have it to show you right now.
Did she die? Did she die a violent death, or did she live to an old age?
I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh.
Right now, she's still in her sexual prime, so I think we have a ways to go. But like I said, Napoleon really fucked with her, and she really fucked with him. And it's sort of an interesting, like, he was her bête noire. He was she just, at every turn in his life, she was there to thwart him. And it's fascinating that a woman during that period could have so much power over the most powerful man in the world.
The Plessy Gray book looks really. Is it about 1,000 pages long? I mean, are you really gonna?
Oh yeah, well, I'm into it. I'm in it to win it. I will be there till her bitter end.
I think you must have been in a past life like a French aristocrat, don't you think? I mean, because you just know so much about them, and you've read all their biographies. They must be like reading about your old friends.
Well, each one leads to a different one. She was also a friend of the Princess de Lamballe, who we spoke about last time.
Right. And Marie Antoinette.
Yes. And so, and she was a favorite of Marie Antoinette's as well. I do have this weird ability. I can read the driest biography of a 16th century nun, her diaries and the letters, that I will sit there and do a book this big about, someone's the letters that they wrote. So yes, there are many times when I'm reading these books where I feel like I'm with friends. I feel like I'm with old friends, and I come across names and I think, oh gosh, it's good to see that name. And I think that's probably a past life thing.
Good old Marie Antoinette.
Yes.
Past life regression coupon in your future.
Okay.
All right. So number 5.
Number 5.
This is another book. It's called Ramble book, and it's by Adam Buxton. Okay, so who is Adam Buxton? Adam is a Brit. He has a podcast, but Adam is one half of Adam and Joe. And probably you're also then thinking, who are Adam and Joe? Adam and Joe were the hosts of an early World of Wonder show. Adam and Joe were 2 students. They made the show entirely in their bedroom. They were pop culture obsessed. And they would make little movies with toys, like Star Wars toys, and do cover versions of movies like The Englishman.
Which what Seth Green does with Robot Chicken.
That's right. That's right.
Sort of an early version of that.
In the UK.
And they're absolutely brilliant. And we're going to put them all on Wow Presents Plus because it was a classic cult series. And so, Adam is a fantastic person. He's written a book. And it's called Ramble. And the thing was, it was about to be published when COVID struck. And that was it. They were like, we're not going to publish the book. We'll wait till the world goes back to normal and then publish the book. But what Adam said was just so brilliant. He said, let me do the audio version of the book. Now, he could have just read the book on Audible, but he actually just completely reinvented the book. And he has given each new chapter a little jingle that he's written. And it's, as a pop culture obsessive, each jingle is like evokes a hit from the time, like he does a trio da 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 jingle, or he'll do David Bowie Let's Dance da da jingle. And he's absolutely brilliant mimic. And then he does these little digressions in the Ramble book, which are where he's out in the countryside walking with his dog, and you can hear the birds tweeting in the background. So he'll be reading the text, and then he'll go on a ramble, which will be a sort of digression. And then there may be a sub-ramble.
I love that, though. I wish all authors would do that.
James, you've got to get this. You will absolutely love it. It's because it's completely random and digressionary feeling, but it's completely fascinating. And it ends up being a sort of encyclopedia of 70s, but mainly 80s pop culture in terms of movies and records, all tied into his adolescence and coming of age. I'm hoping he mentions the genesis of the Adam and Joe show that made him famous, but we'll have to wait and see because I haven't got there yet.
Wait, wasn't there an Adam and Joe show book that you came out with years and years and years ago, right?
Yeah, when the show was happening, we did 4 seasons of a show, and we did Adam and Joe book too.
I think I have it back there.
Yeah, but the other thing about the book that is so moving is that it's prompted by his father. Now, his father was called Bad Dad, and he was an incredibly crusty, snobby, elitist Englishman who's dying. He has lung cancer, and he comes to live with Adam. And so as he's recounting the story of his youth, he's also telling the story of living with his dad in his last few. It's really very funny, very moving, and James, it's very you in the sense of sort of tangential randomness. And it's absolutely lovely. I also think it's a really difficult, Adam is straight, he's white, he's male, incredibly privileged background. It's not an easy narrative to land right now. You think that's not who we want to hear from, but he does it with he's so self-deprecating and humble and why, knowing about his situation and very, it's great. It's really great. And it's only available on Audible because the printed book isn't out yet. And he was saying that when the printed version comes out, he's going to retire the Audible version. It's so brilliant. The idea of, because Audible books are really just like bingeable podcasts, right? I think that's
it might be a trend. Two's a trend because Blake, remember you had talked about Kat Marnell's Audible only. She came out with a book that was Audible only, and that sort of seemed to be like a thing that people are doing now.
Yeah,
I think it's even need the book.
Audible original.
Right.
Audible original.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. All right, so let's take a break. Blake, have you got a question?
I do. What famous television host was the son-in-law or former son-in-law of David Nelson of the Ozzie and Harriet?
Oh, this sounds like a Tom question.
We'll think about it.
You know what it is, Tom. All right, so we'll have the answer right after the break. Before we go, I'll just tell you, Canada's Drag Race is on WoW Presents Plus. And watch Drag Race UK's Vinegar Strokes doing the extra lap recap on WoW Presents Plus on Wednesdays. And then, of course, because you can't get enough, you get the new episode on Thursday. And then on Friday, you get Jeffrey Boyer Chapman's podcast. So it's like 3 days of Canadian right? Extravaganza. Extravaganza. All right, we'll be right back after the break.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm Fenton, James, and Tom, and Blake, and we're counting down the top 10 things that make us go
Wow.
It's so hard to do that in a remote context, isn't it? I think we have to think of a new slogan.
Someday we'll be back together, wowing together.
I wonder. Well, Blake, what was the question you had, and what's the answer? Well, we'll guess the answer, I suppose.
What television host was the son-in-law or former son-in-law of David Nelson from the Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet?
Well, it can't be Bob Barker. Game show host. I'm thinking like an Alan Thicke or something, but no, Tom.
It has to be younger because David Nelson's like, and then it's like Nelson, the rock band was Ricky Nelson's kids.
That would be his parents. Would be the one in between.
But so it would be Nelson age someone. I'm gonna say incorrectly Martha Quinn.
Give it.
I have no idea.
It's Chuck Woolery.
No. Who was he married to?
He was married to Terry Nelson, is her name.
I don't remember Terry.
Chuck Woolery.
All right, Tom, what have we got number 4?
Number 4.
My heart was a little bit broken 3 times this week. First upmost, Kelly Preston, John Travolta's wife, passed away at 57. She had been fighting breast cancer for 2 years. No one knew. It was a shock.
By all accounts, she was a lovely, lovely woman and beloved by everybody is what I'm sort of learning about her. Just a really neat lady.
And there's lots of gossip and jokes about John Travolta's sexual preference and legitimacy of their marriage in the past. But listen, they were together for decades. They had 3 children. I'm over figuring out what people's marriages should look like or feel like or sound like. And I think they were very much in love. And it's a tragedy. And, she's my age. I was talking to Fenton earlier today. It's like, it's that age where it's like, it's shocking because it's so young, but it's all within the realm of possibility. It's like we've entered this.
It's shocking because they're your age. That's why.
Well,
it's
but if
shocking.
you recall, I mean, Fenton, we've talked about this before, how old Andy Warhol was when he died. He was just
Right.
ancient because we were in our 20s and he was 56, wasn't he?
Right.
58.
Now-
He was 58. So
So that
58, which is just chicken. That's just a child to us now. And yet at the time when he just seemed, I mean, you couldn't get older than Andy Warhol. So
Yeah.
I'm sure young people are looking at this and saying, but for us, it does touch.
Yes.
It's very
and
close.
Kelly was predeceased by their oldest child. So, you know, every life has a lot of tragedy. So love pouring out to John Travolta and his family, and rest in perfection, Kelly. The other just mind-boggling, twisty, awful death was Naya Rivera from Glee, who, you know, it's nightmarish. She was on a pontoon boat, found hours later was just her son in a life jacket. There's details that I'm having trouble paying attention to because they're so kind of sad that she may have been able to get her son on the boat, but was unable to get herself there. They finally did find her body.
It was days and days of just refreshing your feed every couple of minutes to see what the update was, because Naya is somebody who means a lot to the current generation. You know, her role on Glee was groundbreaking, and she was she is a very close ally of the LGBT community. She's beloved by the whole generation. So, and you know, and I hate to steal it to keep going for a second, but when you think about the cast of Glee, and you know, people talk about the Glee curse because Corey Monteith, and then what happened with the other guy who was arrested for the child pornography, and then
Mark Salling.
Mark Salling, yes. So it does seem like that whole cast has been through so much.
Yes.
And it's, you know, it's resting.
They don't like to say that. They don't, you know, Ryan Murphy's come out against that. It was a huge cast ultimately, but you know, it does again, it just tugs at your heart, and it was a show that meant so much to a generation.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, but a little less known, was Benjamin Keough, Elvis's grandson, Lisa Marie Presley's son. Brother of
Riley, the model.
Who's a beautiful model.
Yeah.
Died at 27, I think, of a drug overdose. We know that family has suffered from that disease. A lot of people say not to be all recovery, but it's kind of it was a gunshot. Sorry, Blake. Thank you. But I do think he was suffering and struggling. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But
handsome boy, and just that whole family is you know, like you said, they've had a lot of tragedy in their life,
and so much. Lisa Marie has had a small career. It must be hard to be in the shadow of Elvis.
Yeah.
But here is this young guy. I learned more about him in the obituaries, but he was signed to like a multi-million-dollar record deal at the end of the 2000s because he had the look. He's Elvis's son.
Yeah.
You know, I assume he was talented, but I mean, you know, everyone's talented to a certain degree. It just feels like here again, once again, I don't know, no life lesson other than you can be given everything the world has to offer with both hands, and you can still suffer your demons. And I hope he's someplace better and out of pain. But it's a tragedy for that family, for Priscilla, you know, the grandmother. And I don't know, it's just all three of those stories for different reasons just kind of gut-wrenched me this week. I wanted to talk about them and pay respect to those three people, and God bless.
Beautifully put. Very, very beautiful. James, number 3.
Number 3.
I cede my number 3 to Blake Jacobs. He is going to be speaking about something. I have no idea what it is. Blake, what do you got for us?
Well, this is kind of sad, but it was really good. It's this docuseries called Outcry. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's on Showtime, but I believe you can also watch it on Hulu. It's about a high school football star in small town Texas. His name is Greg Kelly, and he was accused in 2013 of molesting a 4-year-old boy.
Oh, dear.
He'd moved in with his friends, Jonathan's parents. They knew each other through football, even though Greg was like way better at football. His family kind of took in Greg, and his mom, Shama, I believe, ran a daycare out of the home. And one of the kids went home and said that Greg, you know, had fondled him, and so it started this. Well, that's kind of what the whole show is about. Like, he said that he was guilty from the very beginning, but the prosecutors in the case, I think they just wanted to win. You know, they put someone away. They were disgusting, and the lead prosecutor, her name was Jana Hunt, I believe. Jana Duty. Her husband was like a video editor, and she had him make a tape mocking all of Greg Kelly's supporters, because he had a lot of supporters, probably because he was like the high school football star in small town Texas. But that was one of her, and she also went to jail several times for like violating gag orders, withholding evidence, contempt of court. She finally.
So was he framed by the prosecutors? Is that what you begin to think?
Well, I mean, you never know, because there are facts on both sides. But I would suggest watching this. It's on Hulu. It's 5 episodes, an hour each. There's twists and turns. Really
it sounds like hard viewing, though. It sounds like it's sort of hard to get through.
Right. It's a tough subject matter, but if you're into docuseries and stuff like that, you'll enjoy it.
All right. I think I will watch that. I mean, when I've done with the Epstein miniseries,
I haven't watched that one, but I've been meaning to.
That's a hard one to get through, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you believe the Ghislaine Maxwell trial is going to be 1 year from now?
Can you believe she wanted to spend her time between now and the trial in a luxury Manhattan hotel? She had the nerve to ask if she could stay like at the Pierre.
Somehow they've just got to keep her alive. I don't care where they keep her. Just keep her, like, because it just seems like, oh, it's going to be after the election. After the election, we're going to see Trump's tax returns. After the election, we're going to get the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, because you know Trump's involved in the Epstein thing. Anyway, don't get me started.
We're never going to see those damn taxes ever, ever, ever.
Number 2. Paul Smith on Instagram. Do you follow Paul Smith on Instagram?
The designer?
The designer famous for stripes.
Yes, who has the pink building on Melrose that everybody takes their picture
of. Wall.
Yes.
He, during this lockdown, he started to do a series on his Instagram account of his collections.
Oh,
he is
yes.
An insane collector. He collects early satellite navigation systems, textile company fabric books, sugar cubes. He has a whole collection of sugar cubes from all over Europe from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Wrapped sugar cubes.
On earth does a sugar cube last from the 1950s?
You look after them. Labels from fruit crates.
Okay, I can see that.
Seed packets.
Okay. I can imagine there are some interesting seed packets out there.
This is one for me. Blank notebooks.
Oh, you do have a blank notebook. You are the king of blank notebooks. I have 10 of them on my desk from you right now.
Like, that's for you to write your novel. Old audio cassettes.
Okay.
Remember the cassette, the C90, C60, C30 Go?
Sure.
Cigarette cards, which were put into cigarette packets from 1875 until the 1940s. And they were put in the packets to make the packet stiff. They put the card in, and there'd be a collectible card. Cards about gardening, cards about sports stars, cards about celebrities. What else does he collect? Beautiful bookshops, biscuit tins. Anyway, it goes on and on and on. And it's just great to lose yourself, because he's got this fetishistic, forensic. I don't know. His office must be enormous. It's just stuffed full of all these treasures.
Where does he keep all of this stuff? In a big warehouse?
His office, it must be like the TARDIS, just bigger on the inside than it is on the outside.
Benson, I think that this might be your version of hoarders, that you can look at him. He collects too much compared to him. I don't have any collections whatsoever.
And you know he's got more than that. So I'm very excited about that. That's Paul Smith on Instagram. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll reveal the number 1 thing that made us go wow this week. You're listening to the Wow Report on Radio Andy.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm Fenton here with James and Tom. We've been counting down the top 10 things that make us go wow. And we have reached number 1. Big reveal moment, Tom.
Number 1.
You never know who you work with until you get to know them a little bit better. And a wonderful gentleman who works in the development department, Michael Mejia, is going to join us. Blake's going to bring him on. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Tom.
Condolences to Michael and to his family. But I just learned from a post on Michael's Facebook, his grandmother passed away last week, which is a tragedy and it's very sad, and had a big, beautiful family. But what I didn't know is Ava Mejia was an activist, and I want you to tell us all about her. I want her to be our number 1 wow thing of the week. Please share her story.
Oh, thank you. I'm personally honored. I know she would be honored. She was a very strong woman. She loved God. She loved her family, and she loved the fight for equality. She was born in 1931 in Jalisco, Mexico, and that's where she met my grandpa Sabino. He was I learned this, that he was a semi-pro baseball player, and she used to watch him play baseball. So I didn't know that. I did not inherit the baseball gene.
She was a fan. She was a fan, and she stalked him, and that's how they got together. Is that the backstory?
I'll let you tell the story that way, James. But then in 1950, they got married and they immigrated to the United States and settled in Rio Hondo, Texas, southern Texas. There, my grandparents worked in the fields. And following the migrant work, they ended up moving to California, to Delano, California, which is where I'm from. It's the middle of California, in the San Joaquin Valley. In 1965, they'd become involved with the United Farm Workers Union in the movement towards getting equal protections for farm workers. And they were working alongside Cesar Chavez. When the UFW went on strike, my grandparents and my great-grandparents marched from, sorry, my cat is getting... when the farm workers went on strike, my grandparents and my great-grandparents marched from Delano to Sacramento, which is about 340 miles.
Wow.
And they arrived on Easter Sunday in 1966. Later that year, my grandpa was one of the signers of a historic first contract between the United Farm Workers Union and a large grower in the region. So their protesting and their marching worked, and my grandparents were on the front lines of that back in the 60s.
And it was a long dispute, right? It went on for a number of years. Am I right about that?
It went on for through the 80s, up until Chavez passed away in 1993. It was a long fight, anywhere from getting basic things such as toilets out in the field so they wouldn't have to just go somewhere. The biggest one was getting warnings when they would be spraying pesticides on the fields, cancer-causing pesticides. So, the field workers would be out there, and all of a sudden you'd hear a Cessna coming, and that was your cue to run and make sure you grabbed your kids, make sure you grabbed your wife, your husband, get out of the way, or you're going to get sprayed.
Wow.
Oh my God.
It was a big deal that these large growers weren't taking care of the field workers that were, basically feeding the United States.
Yes.
For very cheap, by the way.
Yes.
But my grandma was a musician, and she sang and she played the guitar, and I owe any musical ability I have to her because it comes straight from her. Growing up, she was always singing or playing the guitar. She played at church services, and she was always requested to play at UFW events, the United Farm Workers Union events by Cesar Chavez himself. In 1988, while Chavez was doing his 36-day fast as a protest against the spraying of pesticides on field workers, he would find comfort in listening to my grandma's music to help keep him going, because she played at all the services. They would have a church service every day that the fast was going on, and he would go, and it would just kind of reinvigorate him to go into the next day. when he passed in 93, his memorial at the UFW headquarters in Delano, it's called 40 Acres, my grandma performed for 45,000 people that were in attendance.
Wow.
So she was, eat that, Lady Gaga.
Wait, now, did you know all this about your grandmother growing up, or are these things that you've discovered since, in the last couple of years?
I knew a lot about it, but my grandparents were very humble.
Right.
They didn't talk about these things in a way that made it seem like it was a huge deal. They just talked about like, oh yeah, when we marched, oh yeah, when we had those meetings with Cesar Chavez.
When Cesar and I were hanging out, yeah.
Yeah, the name was a very common name in the family, but it isn't until something like a funeral service or a memorial service that you just hear everything laid out for you.
Yeah.
And you see, you get the view from 1,000 miles up, and it's like this woman lived an incredible life, and she gave so much of herself to her family, to her community, to her people. At my grandmother's funeral, the special guest was Paul Chavez, Cesar Chavez's son, and he mentioned that his dad didn't like being recognized for his work, and he was uncomfortable receiving awards because of the many unsung heroes of the movement, meaning my grandma and my grandpa being included in that circle. And so it's, like I said, my grandparents were very humble people. My grandpa always had a chili in his pocket because he never wanted to be without a little bit of flavor. But, farm workers' lives were really hard, and living conditions were terrible. Racism was common. And my dad was telling me a story about how he remembered one summer living in a barn on a farm where they were working, and how him and his brothers and sisters were kids, and they were excited because they got to sleep under the stars and watch the stars as they slept that night. But it wasn't until later that he realized it's because the barn had holes in the roof that they had put them in to live in. My grandparents never wanted their children to be field workers. They wanted more for them. And that's why they came to the United States, and they taught them hard work, and that gets passed down. And I'm a result of the dream they had for their family. So I've never worked a day in the fields in my life. And I think that's what my grandparents wanted for their families.
Well, they certainly passed on the values. I mean, you work incredibly hard, so.
And you've written about them on your Facebook. Is that where Tom, you said that you were reading about this?
Well, you posted an article from the Cesar Chavez newspaper.
Oh, okay.
It brought me to tears, and hearing more today is amazing, Michael. And it just says, I feel like a lazy lump compared to your grandparents, your family. Yeah. But what a difference! I'd like to think what a difference all of us make in our own, small, medium, or large ways. And you think, oh, I'm useless, or I can't help someone. And just the fact, and she did so much more, the fact that your mother's voice brought such comfort and console to somebody who was doing amazing things and changing the world for the better, literally. And against all odds. And again, none of that is easy or rewarding in the immediate. It's all just such hard legacy, long work. And God bless people like your grandmother and grandfather.
It was such a great article to read, and we'll post it on the WOW Report so you can read it, because it is a fascinating life, and you realize that history is made up of the struggle of individuals and what they contribute and what they do, and that they then pass it on to you, and here you are. So
influence itself is influence is who you connect with. Influence is who you help. Influence is the relationships you build. And my grandmother had a lot of influence. And I'm sad, I'm heartbroken at her passing. I'm sad for my family members. Going to a funeral during COVID was not easy, because we wanted to hug and we wanted to cry, and we did the best we could while social distancing. But she was loved, and she gave love. So thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
And as always, thank you, Tom.
Hug, everybody.
And thank you, Tom, and thank you, James, and thank you, Blake, because that's all we got time for. Go out with a mask and do something that makes the world go wow. Until next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.